From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now, or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. Here are the facts. On July 20th, 1969, the course of human history fundamentally changed and the first man set foot upon the moon. Along with Buzz Aldrin, Apollo 11 mission commander Neil Armstrong collected lunar samples, took photographs, conducted experiments, and, perhaps most famously, planted a U.S. flag upon the surface. In sum total, the Apollo crew spent more than 21.5 hours on the moon before returning safely to Earth. They left several objects behind, including scientific instruments, a mission patch, a gold replica of an olive branch, and a silicon disc containing messages from numerous world leaders. This was the first manned mission to the moon, but not the last. NASA returned to the moon 5 more times, all before 1972, and has not returned since. That is, if you believe the official story. To people across the globe, the moon landing isn't one of humanity's greatest achievements. Instead, it's one of the largest, most insidious hoaxes in the history of our species. Here's where it gets crazy. Almost 50 years later, numerous people still believe the moon landings were faked. Although speculation contradicting the official story began almost immediately after the first landing, the origin of moon landing hoax theories is generally traced to an author named Bill Kaysing, who argued that the technology of the time would make the probability of a successful landing and return nearly impossible. That, in effect, it would simply be easier for NASA to fake the footage on the moon. Over the decades, moon landing theorists have cited numerous details that, in their opinion, prove the moon landing was a hoax. Perhaps the most famous example would be the planting of the flag, which was described as waving in the footage of the EVA. According to spaceflight historian Roger Launius, the flag is moving because the astronaut had placed it there, and the inertia from where they let go just kept it moving. This, however, is only one of the details critics cite. There are numerous other points of contention, from the location of the cameras on the astronaut suits to the absence of visible stars in photos, irregularities in shadows or the lunar surface, and, allegedly, reflections of stage lights on the astronauts' visors. For each of these points, NASA and third-party sources have provided what they believe to be indisputable proof that the landing occurred. And, of course, there's the obvious question: how could an operation this massive be a hoax? Putting aside the astronomical expenses involved in staging a secret production of this type, the simple fact of having so many people involved in a single conspiracy makes it seem, at the very least, improbable that every single individual would keep this secret for nearly half a century. To those who believe the landing was hoaxed, the US had several compelling motives. First, the space race itself was an extension of the Cold War. Could the US have decided to fake the moon landing to achieve political points against the USSR? According to Philip Plait, author of Bad Astronomy, the problem with this theory is that the Soviet government had their own moon program with the ability to analyze data just as well as NASA, and would have quickly spotted a hoax if one existed. Additional alleged motives include increasing NASA's prestige and a way to distract the public from the intensely unpopular Vietnam War. Kaysing, by the way, notes the enormous expense of the mission could have been used to pay people off. Some theorists believe the government was not the only force involved in the hoax, arguing that Stanley Kubrick was recruited to assist in filming footage from a fake moon landing and went so far as to hide clues about his involvement in his masterpiece, The Shining. Mainstream media across the globe largely believe man landed on the moon not once, but 6 separate times, with 2 astronauts reaching the lunar surface during each event. However, according to a vocal minority of Americans, approximately 1 out of 4 British citizens, and numerous people across the globe, the US government, NASA, and the thousands of individuals associated with the Apollo program are all somehow hiding, for decades, the stuff they don't want you to know. Learn more about the fact, fiction, and controversy surrounding the Apollo moon landings as we interview Matt Johnson, the writer and director of Operation Avalanche, in our upcoming audio podcast available at stufftheydon'twantyoutoKnow.com.